I'm with Andy Babiuk, who has written what has to be one of the top, a couple of the top books on the history of musical instruments, especially on the music of the Beatles, a most recent book on the instruments of the Rolling Stones, and also a book on guitar builder and designer Paul Bigsby. So, Andy, thanks for joining us. This is my Coursera students, I think, would be interested in knowing how it is that you got involved in writing this kind of a book about exactly the guitars that the Beatles used.
Well, my personal passion was, a musician myself, and I've been in a band called the Chesterfield Kings for, 20-something, 30 years or whatever, too many years. Anyhow, it was our thing to try to sound like those records. We grew up listening to them, but we wanted to emulate it. And we figured you could buy a Rickenbacker, you could buy this kind of amp. And so then there was more to it. Well, then there was like the recording process. There was a lot to it. And I would just study it for my own head. And it wasn't just with the Beatles, it was with the Stones. And we'd try to emulate stuff and different things. So it became a passion. And then I have been in the music industry for a long time in retail. My forte is vintage guitars in general, just vintage instruments. So it kind of all mutated into this thing. And I was working, and these people would come in and ask for like a Beatles amp. I want a Vox amp like the Beatles had, a Super Beatle. That's what they use in the studio. And I'd say, well, actually they didn't. They only used them live. No. And then you get arguments with people. And I was like, I had done a lot of research, and I go, well, no, they didn't use Super Beatles, and they used AC30s and AC100s. No, I have pictures. And I was like, and these guys I was working with, they'd always laugh at me. They go, another Beatle knucklehead, huh? And I go, no. And one of my buddies said, hey, Andy, you know what you should do? Get a case of beer and lock yourself in the house for the weekend, drink the beer, and just write down everything you know about the Beatles equipment. And you probably have a book. And I go, oh, I never thought of that. That'd be kind of cool. 6 years later, we had the first book. So that was kind of the spark of it, And then I got really into it, and the more I got into it, it's detective work, and I really liked that.
And throughout your book, I think there are probably two main arguments that you advance. One of them is that the instruments, the actual instruments that are used in the amps and the drums and all that, make a difference in the way the music is. And the second is that, ironically or paradoxically, the Beatles seem not to have cared much about those instruments, except as creative, ways to a creative expression.
Yeah, it's really true. That's the thing. When you're right in the middle of working on the research and then writing the book, it wasn't, you don't really come to that moment of clarity of like, oh, so that's all it was? It was a lot of happenstance. They got those instruments. It wasn't contrived. It wasn't like planning. It was just like there, and they just happened to be in the right place at the right time making music with those particular instruments. And as I showed in my presentation, what if they didn't use that? What if they used like different instruments to record those same songs? We have examples from outtakes in the studio where wow, that sounds totally different. It gives you a different mood, different feel. So the tools of the trade I find to be really important, as with studying anything really. But that was their tools,
Well, the book is just fantastic, and so for Beatles fans who really want to get into the detail of some of these sounds, I can't more highly recommend Andy Babiuk's Beatles Gear. It's a fantastic piece of work. And Andy, thanks for talking with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.